Now you're very welcome back. We're turning our attention to one of the big brewing stories of the week, and that's the potential return of Roy Keane to his old stomping ground in Sunderland. We'll also talk about the news that broke today that Anthony Barry is leaving the Republic of Ireland set up to go to, well, one of the best teams in the world, literally the number one team in the world at the moment, and that's Belgium. I'm delighted to say former Republic of Ireland international David Connolly is with us. David, good afternoon, good evening to you. How are you?
Afternoon, Ger. Very well. You?
I'm good. This has been a very interesting week for fans of Irish football, in particular the Roy Keane scenario. I have to say, I thought his time as a manager was finished. There weren't many jobs that you think he would be a fit for all sorts of different reasons, but maybe Sunderland was one that we just hadn't thought about properly. When you heard this, did you think, yeah, that makes sense? Or did you go, wow? What was your take?
Well, it was a surprise, I guess, but you know, that is probably due to the time away that Roy's had, you know, as a number one. So, look, we all know he's been a number two, but that's not Roy. Roy wants to be a manager, and he said that for a long time. However, it doesn't seem like any opportunities presented themselves, and it's very difficult to get back in after such a long time. But I guess it's testament to the job he did first time around, right? You know, that Sunderland are looking at him again. And, there's only 17 games left. They are, you know, a little bit behind Wigan and Rotherham, above them in League One. Does he know the level? You know, it's a bit different sitting in the studio talking about the Premier League to knowing, you know, the players, the opponents, you know, your coaching staff. A lot of his old coaching staff from Sunderland are elsewhere in work. You know, Tony Loughlin's at Burnley. So, you know, not only him as a number one, but I guess his coaching staff is really important, because you look at Steven Gerrard, you look at Frank Lampard, when they get a role, you know, they've got their trusted staff. I don't know, you know, exactly what Roy would do. And I think that's an important part of the job, because Roy's not a coach. You know, he's a manager, so he'll need someone on a training pitch. But it's certainly fascinating, that's for sure.
What was he actually like as a manager? For somebody who'd played with him, what was he like as a manager?
Well, I think it was, in some regards, it was an easy job. It's not an easy job, but, you know, there was kind of really only one way it could go. And also, he's fresh from finishing playing. A lot of the lads he signed, he knew the characters he was getting. He knew what they would bring. You know, he signed a lot of Irish lads, a lot of lads from United, a lot of backroom staff from United. And I think that helped. He doesn't have that now. I mean, you know, he brought a few to Ipswich as well when he went in there. But, you know, you could have the best times of your season, of your career under Roy, but you could maybe have your worst as well. And there'll be a lot of players that, you know, at different ends of the spectrum, you know. And I had great respect for Roy as a player and when he got the manager's job, you know. And I don't think it's a time now when you ask former players, you know, about Roy, and then some people criticise him and some, you know. I just think it'd be, for someone who really wants to get back in, I think it'd be great if he did. And just to see if he has, you know, changed somewhat, because you don't want to lose that winning mentality, which, you know, made him the player he is, and also you need that as a manager. But I think you have to evolve a little bit, and it'll be interesting to see if he has.
It will be interesting. I definitely, I'm not sure he has. I haven't seen that evolution in the punditry. The punditry is still very much the same character he was as a footballer, and that's why it's really good on telly. I'm not sure the modern dressing room responds very well to... Do you remember Micah Richards was absolutely creasing himself laughing at the whole notion that he would get into the Man United gig, and Keane was very upset about this, and they've subsequently released a sponsored video for Sky Bet where Keane again gets kind of pissed off with him, going, well, what was so funny about that? And I was like, you literally sat here in this studio and ripped them all a new one, and then you're wondering why we think it's funny that you might go back in there. It doesn't make any sense. And Keane didn't seem to have an understanding that, like, people don't like being shouted at.
Well, no, but I think there's different styles and ways of managing. Don't get me wrong. I think in terms of his punditry, you know, he plays that role, and I think it's an honest role. He's very, he's got an acerbic, you know, sort of way, dry wit. He can be very good company, but also he's honest. And if you ask a lot of, you know, players what they want from a manager, I tell you, they'd rather have an honest one I'm not here beating the drum for Roy at all, because I think, like everyone, no one's perfect, but he's certainly honest. Whether he would improve this young squad at Sunderland is a completely different question, because you're going from watching Premier League games on TV, to suddenly managing in League One against lads at Rotherham. Paul Warren's been there, done it for seasons. Liam Richardson, Wigan, the same. Gareth Ainsworth, Wickham, the same. The likes of Gareth Ainsworth have got stuff out of players that no one else could in that league. Is Roy able to do that with his style of management? I agree. On TV, you'd say his personality hasn't changed, but whether he gets that managerial role, he'd have a number two to balance that out with, would be important, like he had at Sunderland. But he'll still have his confrontations, and I think that's what happens in management. But you can't. Someone isn't going to change their spots, and you don't necessarily want them to completely. Otherwise, they're not that same person. So it has to be tempered, right? It has to be tempered. Has to be real. And you don't. Let me tell you, no player wants a fraud as a manager. A liar, someone who doesn't tell you. And I think with Roy, he'll certainly tell you the truth. That's all right,
Yeah, and well, it'll be his truth for sure. So the stories after he leaves the clubs come out from players, and frequently they're players who were pissed off. So I'm always very reluctant to say that's a true characterisation of his entire time at a club. The rows at Ipswich with Johnny Walters, but then there's other stuff. People in the dressing room, they tell the stories. It's never the player who was getting picked week in, week out, who is performing well, who comes out with these stories. And so that doesn't mean the stories aren't true. It just means it's not the full picture. Like around the Ireland squad, for example, the Stephen Ward voice note did the rounds. We all know about it. And it did sound like he was certainly having rows with players still about injury issues, which is kind of ironic given what happened in Saipan. So, he as a manager, can you do that? Or is that the bit where he was fulfilling the role of the number two, and he would be different this time as a number one?
Well, you don't know. But look, whether you agree with secretly recording things, putting it out there, I guess it's hard to counter that, because Roy, would sell books with putting stuff in books, and so, where's the comparison, right? Because if a player's asked a question, he'll tell a story like Roy would tell a story and put it in a book. So, they're both entitled to do that. But whether you get as many players saying as many positive things about Roy as not, is, I guess, up for debate. Look, I had some great times with Roy, but I also had some bad times. I haven't said any of them really, because there's, I don't really believe it. So, I think everyone has their strengths and their weaknesses, and somewhere along the way there's a middle ground, right? So you can't have it always. You're going to have some good and bad times.
Well, that's interesting, right? I think that would certainly be how I would expect most football dressing rooms, and the relationship that most people have with their managers in, let's face it, a very masculine, macho environment. Football, it's cutthroat. Everybody's a professional. Everybody needs to stay fit and get paid. And if you're not in the team, you won't be getting win bonuses. It's like there's a million different things that go into whether or not you get on with the person who is directly responsible for picking you and picking the team and deciding the tactics. And that relationship will have ebb and flow. Like you mentioned his book. You get a mention in his second book. I presume you've read it and you know what he says. Dave Connolly, who I had played with for Ireland, a funny old lad, a strange lad, but he was a goal scorer, so he could be as tricky as he liked.
Yeah, I mean, look, that's fine. I mean, Roy is, I'm sure Roy is, he's not one for putting an arm around people, and but I think if he kind of respects you, he might say something like that, and if he didn't, equally, if he said something negative, you'd analyse it and take it in. I think Roy was trying to allude to the fact there, but I would give as good as I got with Roy. Make no mistake. I didn't lie down for Roy, but ultimately, I think those players who did a job for him, I think he respected those players. But ultimately, he kind of fell out with nearly every one of them, or most of them. And if you're a strong personality, as you have to be with Roy, inevitably that leads to conflict, right? And that's happened at Ipswich, happened with Ireland, and but. So I can see how he's such a divisive character, but You know, I just think he's got a little bit of something. I think that you could get out as a manager with a really good coaching staff.
Right.
I think he needs that. I think he needs that.
You were his top scorer in the championship, right? When you got promoted.
Yeah.
So, how often are you having these tricky conversations, and how often do you need to be like? He obviously felt like he could have that kind of argumentative relationship with you, and that you would respond to that.
Well, no, it'd just be, you know, if you weren't playing or something happened in training, you know, the odd time. But you know, he didn't have to, you know, sort of boot me out the door or underperforming or wasn't training well or playing well. You know, he didn't have that issue with me like he did with some others. And managing conflict, some do it better than others. You know, whether he's a modern day Graham Potter or not, no, that's not his style. He would manage conflict head on. Whether he still does that, I don't know. Some managers don't manage conflict head on. You know, they put it to one side, and you look at Aaron Connolly, you know, slowly phased out of Brighton. Maybe, you know, Graham Potter's avoided the conflict there. Who's to know which way is right or wrong, right? But Roy would probably be a bit more acerbic, and I think a bit more confrontational if Aaron was playing under him, if he wasn't what he wanted, you know. So I don't know. That's just a kind of an example I'm trying to think of. You know?
No, look, it's really interesting because it's who knows? I mean, he could go in, the team could be set up for success. He can have an immediate impact. They go on this amazing run, they get promoted, and that might be, he might ride off into the sunset at that point, or it could be a complete disaster. Like literally every outcome is on the table here, I suppose.
But Ger, you know, I know managers that managed in and I talk to them, and they might have lost their job because of one bad signing. You know, the margins are so fine. Roy goes into a club in League One and he doesn't know the level. He doesn't know the players. He's got to quickly get up to speed. He can't recruit. He's got to use what he's got. Is he going to be able to improve them? Is he going to get his recruitment right in the summer if he's there beyond that? You know, does he know what shape to play? Does he know the shape that formations that all the other teams are playing? What's his analysis like? You know, there are so many, so much to organise in that league. I mean, it's so difficult to get out of it. It really is. And I got out of it with Southampton, but we had a Premier League team in all intents and purposes. And it took that quality to kind of get out. Sunderland have been trying for, 5 seasons now? So it's a real gamble to go with someone who doesn't know the level. It really is.
One of the things that we heard with Craig Hope of the Daily Mail on yesterday's OTB AM, and he said that the players were annoyed when the director of football came in and explained that the manager had been sacked, and they were talking about XG in the conversation to explain why this decision had been made, and that some of the players were kind of, you know, old school was the phrase I think that was used. Maybe the players will respond to an old school manager, but I can't see Roy necessarily being part of that XG and data driven analytics movement, that it seems like the ownership and the director of football are taking the club in that direction.
Well, look, possibly, you know, look, Southampton have taken, you know, Rasmus Ankerson from Brentford, who started a lot of the statistical models with XG and stuff like that, you know. Whether that is Roy's, you know, forte or not, or he buys into that, this is what he'll have his discussions with in an interview. And how modern a day manager is he now? You know, so 11 years, 10 years, a long time, you know, from when you first had that role, and 15 years before that for Sunderland. So football moves pretty quickly, and you know, season on season, week by week. You know, there's lads that have really struggled there, Paul Cook and people like that, you know, at Ipswich, who've had a lot of success in league. It's a really difficult job, you know. I
made the point a couple of days ago that someone needs to be a friend to him and say, you're really good at the football punditry. It's very enjoyable. You're making really good money doing it. If you do this, it's the wrong job for you at the wrong time. He just needs a friend to tap him on the shoulder and say, don't do it. I don't know. You seem to be thinking he has to do it.
Well, I think, look, Gary Neville tried it, and it's a lot harder than it is to talk about it, you know. But he was able to pretty quickly just slide back into his old role. So Roy might feel that opportunity will still be there for him, like it was for Gary Neville, if it didn't work out. And it's an itch he's got to scratch. You can tell that. So
I guess that's true. I guess that is true. That the TV companies are definitely going to take him back because they know.
Yeah, look, Ger, there's no one else like him. So it's like, I do work in radio in England, but there's probably 10 a penny that sound exactly the same like me. But Roy's way, there's not too many like that.
You need to fake a Cork accent there, David. That's the problem.
Yeah, exactly. So I think it'd be pretty quick back in Sky. I don't think he'd lose much. He wouldn't lose much ground. The money wouldn't be an issue, and he's got back in the game.
Yeah, and actually, he gets a full new range of stories that he gets to write in his third book about this generation of players and how he kind of couldn't quite connect with Gen Z. It's like a whole new section of it.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, there's probably, they look like a good, honest bunch of lads at Sunderland, but they're a young group, and a young group, they're young, they might be hungry. I've seen them against Ipswich live. They did lack a little bit of quality, but that's what Roy. That's the level, right? And it's not Championship level like he was there last time or Ipswich. This is League One, and the players, and they've had to cut their cloth as well. They lost their top scorer last season, Sunderland. So they're not quite the same. The good lads that were there, he might have known. Grant Ledbetter, he's retired. So it'll be a whole new set of circumstances to go into, and that will be a real challenge.
I haven't heard any whispers about who might be a number two or who might be available to go in alongside him. Do you have any insight into that, David, or who might be candidates?
No, but as I was saying, look, Stephen Gerrard, he gets the job. He's got Michael Beale, he's got Gary McAllister, bang, he's in. Frank Lampard, he's got Joe Edwards, Paul Clement, they're in. That's his staff. His trusted number two, who would balance him out, he was his kind of yang to his yin, was Tony Loughlin, but he's with Sean Dyche at Burnley, and he has been for, 15 years, or no, 12 years maybe he's been with Sean Dyche at Burnley. So I'm not too sure who his staff would be, and let me tell you, if you're a manager, you need a good coach, and when you've been on the telly, and it's hard to know who those good coaches are operating at that level, although we'll have plenty of contacts, but I think it's a real look at Anthony Barry going to Belgium. Good reputation, but would Roy know someone like that? Would they know Roy enough to gamble on Roy? How long will Roy be in a job? I don't think too many are going to leave jobs they're in, to be honest.
Well, that's the thing. We don't know how long this will be. It's until the end of the season is what we expect. Maybe they give him a longer term contract with a break clause in the summer. Who knows? You mentioned Anthony Barry there. Just from a Republic of Ireland perspective, we certainly felt like we could see the imprint of what he was trying to do. Ireland went to 3 at the back. They did it really well very quickly as soon as he arrived. You could see that the coaching and the coaching ticket that they put together under Stephen Kenny was excellent. This is a major blow to the FAI and their sense of prestige when somebody like this gets tempted away.
Yeah, I guess, you're always going to face that challenge, I think, when you're working for Ireland. One, because if a job came up like this, Belgium, and two, that's the prestige of that, but two, the money, and the FAI are, as we know, in dire straits, what they pay people. I remember speaking to Mick McCarthy when he was manager, and there was a possible role for me there in terms of watching opposition, because I was doing it for Bristol City at the time, but he said they won't pay it, so they wouldn't pay for that role. They got someone from the 21s to do 2 jobs. So, I think the FAI has those challenges.
They actually wanted you to do it for free.
Well, they didn't want to do it for free, but they wouldn't pay for it. So they got someone who was doing it with the 21s to do 2 jobs. You know what I mean? To combine it. So I think the point being, everyone knows the FAI have been struggling for a long time in terms of finances. So Barry leaving, one, prestige job, but two, I imagine, you take the job because it would pay a lot more as well, not just the prestige. So they'd always face that issue, I think. And look, they'll have to, get someone else in. He's had a few changes to his backroom staff, hasn't he, since he's been manager, which is
Damien Duff left, obviously, after the pre-match video against England saga blew up, and then he was replaced by Anthony Barry, and obviously Alan Kelly left, and he was replaced by Dean Kiley as well. So, but it looked like they had a settled team, and the results had kind of turned a bit of a corner. So we were all hopeful that they would nail down the contract.
Yeah, the only thing is, look, they're still paying Robbie, aren't they? So there's a few like loose ends. I don't know, maybe maybe he might feel he can get by for this minute. I don't know, before the Ukraine game, or would they look to get someone in before the Ukraine game? I don't know. It would be interesting. Someone in a job maybe combine two roles, a bit like Dean's doing, at Palace and things like that. So we'll have to wait and see.
All right. Our football is with Sky. Watch Everton take on Brentford in the FA Cup this Saturday, live only on Premier Sports. Is your gut instinct, David, that Roy Keane is going to take this gig?
Well, it's just whether he gets offered it. If he gets offered it, I think he'll take it. But it's just whether he gets offered it.
Right. Okay. Either way, whatever happens, it's going to be pretty interesting. When you were knocking on his door in Saipan in 2002, did you think you'd still be talking about him 20 years later?
Well, I mean, I guess, yeah, because, you're in football, for a long time, aren't you? So it's... I'd say it's interesting to talk about, but what I don't think is particularly great. Then you get all these, coming out of the woodwork, and everyone has their 2 pennies worth. I don't think, and I know that's what you have. You get different people on, but it's.
You mean the ones who just have the negative stories? Because I'd say.
Yeah.
Well, David, sorry, just to balance it out, David Myler comes on and talks nothing but love for Keane. Now maybe that's the Cork thing in him as well, but he's like, I thought I was a midfielder playing for the Republic of Ireland, and Roy Keane was in the backroom team, and I was getting picked. Like he talks about that. His eyes light up about the fact that he was learning from one of the greatest midfielders of all time. And there's probably are plenty of people who feel that way about their time with Keane, but no one listens to those stories, and they don't get clipped up.
Yeah, so I guess, look, there is a balance to be had there, but don't get me wrong. I had my battles with him too, but. I just think when someone really wants to be a manager and he's not doing it for the money or anything else, he's got that desire, and it's channeling it in the right way, like he could as a player. It's a lot harder as a manager, and it's getting harder. It's getting even harder. It's harder than it was 15 years ago. I think you got less time now. I think the players are just changing season upon season. I think it is a difficult job, man management, and that is a real challenge. And also, he's lost this coaching staff that he would use. So there's lots of things to iron out.
Maybe the arranged marriage of the existing coaching staff at Sunderland is exactly what he needs. You've got to work with these lads. They're going to be your coaches. You're going to have to find a way to work with them, and they know their stuff. Go off and you be the motivator and the manager, and let them look after the coaching and the tactics. Yeah,
the only thing is then I think you're very wedded to how good those staff are, and also trust is a huge part of Roy's character and his DNA. And I think it'd take him a while to trust them, and I think he'd rather have his own men. But that's just how I see it. I could be wrong, But look, some managers, to get a job, have to utilise the existing staff. I'm not saying that's the case with Roy, but sometimes you're told that. I'll be amazed if Roy would do that, but if he's desperate to get in, maybe he would.
Yeah, it's true, and it's about who's available and who else might take the gig. Well, David, it's fascinating as always. Great stuff. Great to have you on again. Thanks a million.
Cheers, Ger. Take care.
It's David Connolly there, of course, capped 41 times for the Republic of Ireland, giving us his thoughts on the Roy Keane at Sunderland situation. We'll update you on the news, of course, whenever it breaks about what is going to happen. A reminder, all the football on Off the Ball brought to you with Sky. Watch Everton take on Brentford in the FA Cup this Saturday, live only on Premier Sports.